The judge was lifting her gavel when a small hand slipped into mine, warm and shaking. Cameras were chewing on my name like it was breakfast, the word thief bouncing off the wood panels like it had paid for a front row seat. Then a little voice cut through the noise. "I know who did this, Mommy." And for the first time in weeks, the room remembered how to breathe. "My name is Clara. I spent years polishing a life that wasn't mine, making the Hamilton mansion shine so hard you could find your reflection in the stair rails. I steamed shirts that cost more than my rent, folded corners tight enough to hold the day together, learned which hallways creaked at night, and which faucets needed the extra twist. That house knew me. And in the middle of all that marble and money was Ethan Adam Hamilton's boy, the kind of kid who could turn an ordinary Tuesday into a sunrise with one laugh. He'd trail me with a toy car while I changed linens and ask why I tucked the sheets like little triangles. "Because it helps the bed remember it's a bed," I'd say, and he'd nod like I had told him a secret. After his mom passed, he learned to cry without sound, and I learned to hear it anyway. I made grilled cheese the way he liked, cut the crusts just right, sang off-key to make him pretend to complain. Love doesn't show up on a pay stub, but it shows up, you know what I mean? Then a family heirloom vanished. A diamond with more history than a museum plaque, last seen in a velvet box that lived behind a code I didn't have. Margaret Adams' mother liked to say things through the side door. "Clara, we need to talk." And suddenly I was standing in front of two faces I knew well, one tight with control, one tight with uncertainty. Power has a smell like polished wood and cold air. It filled that room. They called the police. Not the curious kind, the scripted kind. Questions came dressed as statements, answers were treated like inconveniences. I kept saying the same things. Check the alarm logs. Pull the hallway cameras, ask who had access to the jewelry room that night. But those weren't the answers they wanted. When a jewel disappears, the poorest person in the room turns into a theory, and theories are easy to hand to the press. Do you think that's fair? There's a specific cold living in courthouse hallways, the kind that chews on your fingers and makes your last name feel heavy. The summons came with a clock you can hear even when the room is quiet. I learned what your name sounds like in a clerk's mouth when it's reduced to a case number. I learned the difference between being nervous and being dismissed, and how fast guilt gets assigned when status gets involved. Yeah, that happened. That night, I sat on the edge of my bed, watching the refrigerator light turn off and on like it was breathing with me. Then a knock. Ethan Cheek's flushed hair a mess, hugging me with the kind of hug you don't earn. It just shows up. He didn't ask, "Did you do it?" He asked, "Are you coming back?" I said, "Soon, baby," and I said it like a promise I had no right to make. He handed me a drawing of us holding hands under a crooked sun. Grace in crayon. Meanwhile, Margaret moved like a conductor with a private orchestra. She hired Dr. Marcelo Ribeiro, the kind of lawyer who can turn a rumor into a closing argument, and bill you for the air he breathes. She took lunches that end in headlines, made calls that begin with, "I shouldn't say this," and end with a camera on your sidewalk. Adam focused on spreadsheets like the numbers might testify for him. Silence can be louder than a verdict. If it were you, what would you have done? Day one of the trial, the prosecution painted me like a woman who planned a heist between washing whites and ironing cuffs. They took words like grateful and loyal and flipped them upside down until they looked like motive. The gallery nodded because nodding is easier than thinking, because money makes certainty feel like common sense. I asked again about the camera outside the jewelry room. Funny coincidence. It just happened to be off during the exact window the jewel vanished. Off like a light someone decided not to see. I said it mattered. They said it didn't. You learn to fold yourself small enough times, and you start doing it on purpose. I was assigned a public defender who treated my life like a stack of paperwork and me like the stapler. Then a knock, late, soft, stubborn. Emily, a young lawyer with a spiral notebook and a spine that didn't bend when money tried to push it. "I've been following your case," she said. "I don't have a big name, but I have time and I have questions, and I have the kind of persistence that keeps you up until the truth is loud enough to hear." She filed to replace my attorney, then sat at my wobbly kitchen table and built a timeline down to the minute. She circled the camera outage in red, requested the alarm disarm logs, listed every person who touched that room in the last month. She found a photo from a charity gala. Margaret in a dark dress, something familiar sparkling at her neck. And for one electric hour, we felt air returning to our lungs. We saved the photo. We printed it. We breathed. By morning, the post was gone. The site cited a copyright issue. The photographer stopped answering. The cached page suddenly forgot what cached means. Influence can erase pixels, but not your memory of them. Emily looked at the empty screen, then at me and said, "Okay, so they're trying. That means we're close." Inside the mansion, adults were suddenly very busy, not answering a child's questions. Ethan remembered getting water late and seeing his grandmother near the office, a shiny something in her hand, a small wooden box with a gold lock, a whisper that felt like ice. "Clara will be an easy target." Margaret called it a dream, then called boarding school a possibility. Gifts appeared. New video games. Promises of an amusement park trip. Control has many costumes. My turn to speak in court came with a microphone that loved every nervous breath. I told them who I am, what I touched, what I didn't. I talked about Ethan like he was my own because a heart doesn't need paperwork. Words landed like snow on warm pavement, melting before they touched anything. No nods, no frowns, just the polite stillness people wear when they're waiting for the person they trust to tell them what to think. Then the doors opened, and the air changed before anything else did, like it got the hint early. Ethan pulled away from his nanny, ran down the aisle, and squeezed my hand like a lighthouse holds a ship in a storm. The judge asked for order, asked for him to be removed, but Adam stood up, voice shaking, and said, "Let him speak." In that moment, a son chose courage over habit. The room went still. Ethan didn't shout. He just said what he saw. The office light. The shiny thing. The wooden box with the gold lock. The words his grandmother whispered. He pointed to the desk where the box would be. The prosecutor called it imagination. The judge called for a pause and an inquiry. I called it what it was. The truth finally getting an invitation. Stick around, because what happened next will blow your mind. And that night, Adam walked into his mother's office without knocking. I wasn't there, but I can see it. Leather and cologne, a portrait on the wall, pretending not to listen. He asked straight. She answered with family and legacy, and a brand of love that sounds like protection until you count the cost. When he left the conversation, he didn't leave the room. He searched. Drawers, bookshelves, the panel behind the cabinet, a safe, small and gray with a key hiding 3 inches from the fancy pens. He opened it. Let me tell you, there are seconds when a man's face resets, when everything he's been telling himself meets evidence that doesn't care about feelings. The jewel was inside, wrapped in cloth, sitting with other things that didn't belong in the shadows. At sunrise, he carried the safe to the police like a man carrying both proof and apology. Headlines changed lanes without signaling. The same anchors who spat my name like a punchline learned how to soften it. The internet discovered the word injustice like it was newly invented. Reporters at the courthouse tried to apologize with their eyes. That doesn't work, by the way. You can't unring a bell and you can't unprint a headline. If it were you, would you forgive that easily? In court, Emily didn't grandstand, she mapped. Camera off when it mattered most. Staff moved or silenced when they started remembering the wrong things. The gala photo that lived for a night before influence made it disappear. The safe a son opened when he chose his child over his mother's power. She didn't say conspiracy. She said pattern. The judge listened, then called the process flawed from the start, and cleared my name with a sentence I will remember longer than my birthday. Ethan ran into my arms again. "Mommy," he said, "and before you write paragraphs about boundaries, let me say this. Grief doesn't care about your rule book. It just finds the arms that held you when the room felt dangerous." I held him until the cameras got bored. Adam stood across the aisle, relief and shame sharing a chair in his throat. Margaret sat very still, the way people sit when they're trying not to learn anything new. The next hearing wasn't mine. It was hers. Former employees finally out from under gravity found their voices. A gardener with a story that smelled the same. An accusation with no proof, a dismissal, a rumor that did the heavy lifting. A maid who described threats so soft, they sounded like kindness. Paperwork appeared like it had been waiting for weather to turn. Charges grew real names. Perjury, defamation, obstruction, misusing family assets. The gavel came down. No drama. Just wait. People asked if I'd sue. I thought about it while the washing machine sang through its spin cycle. Anger can buy new furniture, but it can't sleep in your bed without turning into a roommate you hate. I wanted my name back. I wanted quiet mornings where the only thing that judged me was whether the coffee was strong enough. Peace is not cheap, but neither is bitterness. Then Adam did something I didn't see coming. He stood in front of microphones and apologized without a PR glaze. Called his silence a choice he couldn't defend anymore. Promised to run his family's businesses with transparency and respect. You can roll your eyes. People promise all kinds of virtues when the spotlight stings. But then he asked me to help build a foundation for women who get accused, because it's convenient, not because it's true. At first I laughed because the idea of my name on letterhead felt like a joke the world wasn't ready to understand. Then I stopped. Why not? Emily said yes before I finished asking. We wrote a mission in plain English. Legal aid that shows up fast. Emergency stipends so a woman doesn't lose her apartment while she's proving she didn't do what someone with power says she did. Counseling you opt in to not get dragged through. We called it Second Light. The first light, the kind that hits you like a headline, can be cruel. The second light is where you start again. Ethan comes over on Saturdays still to make pancakes in a skillet that needs a steady hand. Sometimes he calls me Mommy. Sometimes he calls me Clara when he's trying to be very grown and very serious. We don't correct either one. Love can share names. You know what I mean. I don't feel brave. Brave is a movie word. I feel like a woman who didn't bend all the way when the storm told me to fold. I feel grateful for a kid who spoke when adults were busy protecting their reputations. Grateful for a young lawyer who decided inexperience is not a reason to stay home. Grateful for a son who finally told the truth to his mother and then acted on it. That's not a blueprint for justice. That's a miracle that paid attention. But let's be real about the part that still stings. Who gets believed when the room is expensive? Whose tears look like evidence? How a camera goes dark at the exact wrong time, and nobody with a badge gets curious until a child testifies. Why an inexperienced woman with a spiral notebook did more for me than a system with a building full of officials. Do you think that's fair? I could tell you I forgive everyone and tie this story with a neat bow. I don't. Not yet. Forgiveness is a door that opens from the inside when the house is finally clean, and I'm still mopping corners where shame tries to hide. I forgive Adam in pieces, the way you forgive someone who learned late but chose right when it counted. I forgive the neighbors who looked away because we've all believed the loudest voice in the room at least once. I don't forgive the machine that turned my life into a headline before it turned into a case. That machine is still humming. Margaret is under house arrest in the same house I used to dust. Some of you will call that poetic. It doesn't make me anything. A painting on the landing shows a woman with a half smile like she knows something you don't. Maybe Margaret looks at that painting every day and thinks about power and what it costs. Maybe she doesn't. Either way, quiet finally bills her, not me. People stop me on the bus and say they watched my story. They call me strong, then ask for a selfie, like they're borrowing a teaspoon of it. I say yes when I can. I say no when I need to. Strength that can't say no isn't strength, it's performance, and I've performed enough. At the foundation, I sit in meetings where women tell their stories in voices that try not to shake. We teach them to breathe through the microphone, to hold their truth steady when someone tries to price it. We pay a rent bill. We call a reporter back. We show up in court. We stay until the room changes. So that's my life now, or enough of it to tell today. A jewel disappeared. A lie put on nice shoes and tried to walk all over me. A child spoke. A safe opened. A headline learned a different word for my name. And a woman walked out of a courthouse with her dignity still attached to her body. That woman is me. Now I want to hear you. Would you have sued for damages or taken the quiet like I did? Do you think Ethan calling me mommy is beautiful, or a boundary we let blur because we were healing? Should the media be required to apologize with the same volume they used to accuse? If it were you, what would you have done when the camera was mysteriously off and the room was ready to be done with you? Tell me where you're watching from. A bus, a break room, a kitchen table after the kids are finally asleep. And tell me the bravest truth you ever said out loud. If this story mattered to you, hit subscribe, share it with someone who needs proof. The floor can stop falling, and drop your take in the comments. The fierce one, the kind one, the complicated one. I'll be there reading, answering, learning. Justice isn't a gavel, it's a conversation we keep having until the room changes. So let's talk.